On November 3rd, 1935, the NFL played its worst game ever, featuring the Boston Redskins taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, in a show that was marred by the most interceptions in NFL history. There was 11 interceptions by both teams combined and 14 turnovers total, with a final score of 7-6. 10,000 fans had to watch this awful game. Join us as we see how this game happened and what makes it the worst NFL game of all time. Today on Daily Sports History. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide, because I throw 11 interceptions every time I play Madden. So the NFL started in 1920. It started as the American Professional Football Association. They later changed it because that is too long. And it continued to grow slowly and slowly. And in the 1930s, it was growing, but the Great Depression took a toll. A lot of teams were dropping out because of financial reasons, because not only could they not afford to pay the players as owners, fans couldn't afford to pay tickets. It was a vicious cycle, and it was a hard time. But coming out of that, the NFL really started to boom. It started to gain traction against bigger leagues, such as Major League Baseball. And the game was very different in the 1920s and 30s than it is today. Today we see quarterbacks making amazing passes down the field, passing the ball 30, 40, 50 times a game. In 1935, the average amount of team passed a game was maybe 15 times, but it wasn't a normal thing. And passes weren't always passed by the quarterback. Back then, it was a little bit different rules, but overall the same gist of the game. Still 4 downs, 4 quarters, still 10 yards to get to a first down, but running backs passed the ball, tight ends passed the ball. It was a very different game. So what made this game possibly the worst game ever in NFL history? Well, we gotta look at the teams first. See, these are two newer teams to the league. The Boston Redskins actually started in 1932 as the Boston Braves, adopting the same name as a baseball team playing in the same stadium as that baseball team. It was very confusing. So the next year they changed it to the Boston Redskins, making it the worst name picked ever in football history, as it's very racist and should never have been picked. But they struggled their first few years. They had some quality players, some quality coaches, and their owner, George Preston Marshall, was a quality owner and had money to back the team. It was just a challenge, and later relocate to Washington, D.C. after the 1935 season, after struggling to find their footing in Boston. And the Philadelphia Eagles were in the same boat. They started in 1933 and were still the newest franchise in 1935. And they struggled just as Boston struggled to find their footing, find consistency, and develop an identity for their team. They struggled on offense mightily, but their defense did come along. So let's look at the key people coming into this game. So Eddie Casey was the coach of the Boston Redskins. He was a Harvard football legend and actually won the MVP of the Rose Bowl back when he was a player, and would later join the College Football Hall of Fame. And this was his first season coaching the Boston Redskins. And though he was known to be a good football mind, he struggled to find success as a head coach. But they had some good players that played both sides of the ball. Cliff Battles was one of the first great running backs in the NFL, known for his speed and versatility. And while he was in college, he actually scored 7 touchdowns in one game. And he would later be inducted in both the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame. And they also had Bill Shepard, who was a running back and defensive back as well, a star from Maryland. And he led the nation while he was in college in points, and was a 3-year NFL rushing top 10 performer, and actually had played with the Detroit Lions before coming to Boston in 1935. So they had some good players coming into the game, and they were facing off against Lud Weary, who was kind of the old school rough and ready coach, and he was the Eagles' first head coach. He co-founded and served as the coach for the first couple years, and he helped fund the team by actually buying remnants of a former semi-pro team. But they also had some great Eds on their team as well. Ed Eggs Mansky was the leading scorer for the Eagles in 1935 and was a College Football Hall of Famer. Was known for his two-way play and was a standout at Northwestern and would go on to play with the Bears when they won the biggest NFL blowout, winning the 1940 NFL title, and actually appeared on a Wheaties box in 1936. And they also had a halfback-quarterback combo in Ed Storm, and he led the team in passing in 1935. Was noted for his ability not only as a thrower, but also a rusher. So these were the key contributors to this game, to these teams. And there's not a lot of information out about this game. So first, the game was played in Boston in Fenway. Yes, that Fenway, the baseball stadium, which is not the best turf for a baseball field. And also conversions back then weren't like they are today. We have people that their job is to maintain the fields. That's not what it was back then. It was a great baseball area, but not made for football. The grass was uneven, and it was November in Boston. It was cold. It was rainy. The ground was wet. But despite this, 10,000 fans came to see the game, which was about an average amount for a typical NFL game back in the 1930s. But unexpectedly, they were about to witness probably the worst game in NFL history. See, you could say this was a defensive struggle, and back then, maybe it was. Or maybe it was just the weather took control of everything. And you have to also understand, in 1935, stats were taken differently than they are today. Some stats didn't even exist. The sack stats wasn't a thing. Tackle for loss wasn't a thing. So our stats are limited, and the game progression is very limited. If you look online about this game, you can only find small clippings in newspapers really talking about a close fought game, not really talking about what actually happened. But it's widely presumed that the first interception happened in the first quarter, and it was from the Redskins, likely thrown by Bill Shepard, and there would go on to be 2 more interceptions thrown in this quarter. Now, who threw them? We don't exactly know. We know by the end of the game how many interceptions were thrown, and in the second quarter, the game started to kind of devolve into the weather taking over. Why were so many interceptions thrown in this game? Because the weather, because the ground. It was so muddy that even though you normally rush the ball in situations like this, because passing the ball back then was more dangerous, it was more risky, because you didn't practice it as much. You needed, and you didn't have to. But since players couldn't get their footing running the ball, they tried to make passes the best they could. Unfortunately, the other team kept catching the ball. So by the second quarter, the Redskins, Bill Shepard was able to rush for 57 yards in the first half and score Boston's only touchdown. Sadly, because of the conditions, they actually missed the kick, so they only had 6 points. And coming out in the second half, the Eagles were able to come out with a pass from Eggs Maskey to Ed Storm of 55 yards, scoring the game-tying touchdown. And then their kicker, Hank Reese, was able to find enough footing to kick the ball, giving them a lead 7-6. By this point in the second half, the Redskins had turned the ball over 6 times, 5 interceptions, and 1 fumble. And the Eagles had turned the ball over 4 times with 4 total interceptions, heading into the fourth quarter. Now, the game was just a 1-possession game. A field goal was all that was needed, but they kept turning the ball over to each other. And then the Redskins had the ball down 1, taking one final push to the end zone or to get close enough to make a field goal. And they ended up throwing another interception, the 11th and final interception of the night, to the Eagles, who took control of the ball and ran the clock out. After this quarter ended with an interception and fumble from each team, but the Eagles escaped just enough to win the game. So the game total of turnovers was 14, with 11 total turnovers. 6 interceptions by the Redskins and 5 by the Eagles. When the game ended, Ed Matsky of the Eagles had thrown 3 interceptions, and Ed Storm had thrown 2 interceptions. And for the Redskins, Bill Shepard had thrown 3 interceptions, and Pug Rinkner had thrown 2 interceptions. Now, at the end of the game, the Philadelphia Eagles had a total of 280 yards to Boston's 206. Just to show you how bad these teams were and why it wasn't just the bad weather and just an unlucky game. Both these teams finished with just 2 wins on the season. And the Redskins would actually move to a new location after this, and the Eagles would fire their head coach. It was a bad situation. These teams were not good, not competitive in this league, and that's what made it such a bad game. It almost seemingly has been buried by the NFL. Unlikely, because the NFL doesn't likely care, but they probably would like to bury the story of the worst game ever in NFL history, because it was terrible. Both these teams were not good, and the weather in this field did not help. But whenever you're thinking about, oh, this game is terrible to watch, just remember, it's not like this game. But my question is to you, what do you think the worst game in NFL history is? And I want to thank you for listening to today's Daily Sports History. If you like this, please share it with a friend or leave us a review wherever you're listening. It really helps get the word out there and let other people know to come listen to more Daily Sports History. And we'll see you on the next one.